The party was in full swing, and the large room was completely filled with the beautiful sound of music, the gentle clinking of glasses, and the voices of dozens of people all talking and laughing at once. My wife, Nora, and I had just arrived a few moments earlier, and I was doing my absolute best to be a supportive and loving partner. I wanted her to feel proud to have me there by her side. That is when her co-worker, a man named Grant, decided to step toward us from across the room. He raised his drink high in the air, his eyes scanning me from my shoes all the way up to my head with a look that felt a bit cold. He looked me up and down and said quite loudly so that others could hear, "So, you other husband?" I have to be honest with you. I really expected someone a little more impressive than this. A few people standing nearby heard him and started to laugh. I looked over at Nora, really hoping in my heart that she would say something to offend me or tell him he was being unkind, but she just gave a small, awkward smile. It felt a bit lonely and heavy in that moment. I reached out anyway, shook Grant's hand, and said, "It is very nice to meet you." He had a bit of smirk on his face as he asked me what I did for a career. When I told him my job, he laughed again, and this time was even louder. "Well, that explains it," he said to the group, shaking his head. "It looks like Nora definitely married down." More people joined in the laughter. I knew in my heart that I could have made him feel very foolish right then and there, but I chose to keep my mouth shut. Grant had absolutely no clue that his little joke had just started a fire that would change the whole company forever. For 4 long months, I had been hearing Nora talk about this man. She described him as someone who was very ambitious, very loud, and someone who always wanted to be the center of attention no matter where he was. She told me she thought he was mostly harmless, even though she often felt frustrated and tired by how much he bragged about himself. I had never actually met him face to face until this party. The night was supposed to be a happy one, a time for everyone to celebrate the company's best year so far. Nora really wanted me to be there to see her world, and I wanted to be there to support her. I had no plan to get involved in any office drama or cause any trouble, but Grant simply would not stop pushing me. He started telling stories about how he and Nora would work late into the night together. He joked about how they had a special connection and understood each other better than anyone else in the building. He kept making sure everyone knew he was one of the rising stars of the company and that he was going places. Eventually, he leaned over toward me and said in a very low voice, "Do not worry, buddy. Some guys are just lucky to have a wife like Nora." For a second, the whole room seemed to go quiet. Nora leaned in and whispered for me to just ignore him and stay calm. I smiled at her and said, "I am trying my best." Grant laughed again, feeling very powerful. Then he raised his voice so everyone could hear and said, "Seriously, man, you should be thanking me. I probably spend more time with your wife than you do." A few people gave nervous laughs, but the mood in the room changed instantly. It was no longer a happy party. Nora's face turned bright red from embarrassment and sadness. I finally turned and looked Grant right in the eyes with a calm expression. I asked him, "Are you sure you want to keep talking like this?" He just grinned and told me, "Absolutely." I reached into my jacket and pulled out my phone. I think Grant thought I was going to try and record him saying something mean so I could show it to someone later, but I was not doing that at all. Instead, I opened up an email that I had received earlier that afternoon. I did not show it to him at first. I simply told him, "You might want to be more careful about making jokes regarding company business when you do not know exactly who you are talking to." He just laughed and asked what I meant by that. I calmly explained that a group of caring experts, the people I work with at my firm, had been asked by the company's big bosses to look into some money records that did not quite make sense. We were helping them because the company was planning to be bought by another business, and when that happens, everything needs to be perfect. The room got very, very quiet. Grant's big smile started to fade away. He asked what any of that had to do with him. I explained that I was hired to do a private check to make sure everyone was following the rules. I was not Nora's boss, but my job gave me a look at very important documents and how senior employees were spending company money. Grant stopped laughing completely. I told him that I had actually seen his name show up several times in reports about money spent on business trips and dinners that did not match the actual receipts he had turned in. His face went very pale, like he had seen a ghost. Nora looked at me, totally shocked because I had not told her about this job yet. Grant tried to save face and said there had to be a simple explanation for the mistakes. I told him, there probably is a reason. That is exactly why we're looking into it, instead of just blaming people right away. Grant stepped a bit closer, looking angry and scared, and asked if I was threatening him. I told him no, I wasn't doing that. I was just explaining why his jokes tonight were not very smart. Then I said something that really changed the feeling of the whole party. I told him that tonight was not the reason his name was in the report, but the way he was acting was making it a lot harder for anyone to want to believe his side of the story. Some of the company leaders standing nearby looked very uncomfortable and started whispering to each other. Grant finally realized that I was not just some random husband he would never see again. I was someone who could have a big impact on his future. He looked at the ground, unable to meet my eyes anymore. Nora pulled me to the side and asked why I had kept this a secret from her for so long. I told her that the work was very private, and I was not allowed to talk about it with anyone who worked at the company, not even her. She looked very sad and told me she was so sorry for how Grant had acted and how he had treated me. I told her she did not need to say sorry for what another grown man does. She is only responsible for her own heart. She said she just had no idea how serious things were for him. Meanwhile, Grant was over in the corner talking very fast to one of the directors. The director looked very serious and asked Grant to go talk in another room where it was quiet. As he walked away, Grant looked back at me one last time. All that pride and arrogance he had earlier was completely gone. The very next morning, the people who handle legal things and rules for the company called me. They wanted to know if I had said anything about the secret investigation at the party. I told them every single word I said. I made sure they knew I did not accuse him of stealing anything. I just told him his name was on a list of files we were checking. The lawyers were okay with that, but they reminded me with a gentle spirit to keep everything quiet from now on. I promised I would, and I meant it. Later that day, Grant's access to the company's computer systems was turned off while they finished the check. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone in the office heard the news pretty fast. A week later, the experts found that some of the money Grant had asked the company to pay back was not handled correctly. Some of it was okay, but a lot of it did not have the right proof. The company decided he had broken their internal rules. It was not as big of a scandal as some people whispered about, but it was enough that Grant decided to quit his job before they could officially punish him. I never felt happy about him leaving. I was not looking for revenge. The real lesson had already been taught that night at the party. He had been mean to me because he thought he knew everything about me just by looking at me. He thought because I was quiet, I was weak. He didn't realize that sometimes the quietest people are the ones who are paying the most attention. Nora and I sat down and had a very deep, heart-to-heart talk after all of this was finally over. She told me that she had laughed at Grant's mean jokes in the past just to keep things peaceful at work and avoid making a scene. I told her I understood why she did that. But it was important to see how staying silent can sometimes make people think it's okay to be disrespectful. If we don't speak up, people think we agree with them. She agreed with me completely. We talked about how strange it was that our two worlds had crashed together like that. She just wanted me to be her husband at a party. But I ended up being the person who knew her co-worker's biggest secrets. Months later, Nora told me that Grant actually reached out to her. He said he was sorry for how he treated both of us. He admitted he thought I was just an ordinary guy he could pick on and make himself look better. Nora told him that I never tried to hurt his career. He was the one who had to face the results of his own choices. When she told me that, I just gave a small smile. I did not feel like I had won a prize or a trophy. That night taught me that you never truly know what is going on in someone else's life or what kind of power they might have. Grant thought he was just telling a joke, but his own pride ended up showing everyone exactly who he really was.